Hello, everybody. What is up? It is Maduric, and welcome to the Wilder Racing Academy, session number 2. So I got a couple topics that I set up we're going to talk about on technique and strategies to help you get faster. And I'm going to kind of talk about those side by side. The first main topic we're going to talk about is using alternative senses to be faster, and we're going to focus on hearing for this one. And then along with that, we're also going to talk about understanding steering angle with using both a wheel and a controller, or a keyboard for that matter, and how understanding this concept will also allow you to be faster on track. Because we all understand what steering does. Obviously, it turns the car, but we also want to understand what effects that has in the game and in racing. And then we're going to do a fun race with Pims. So I'm going to trail behind Pims as we race. We're going to record it. I'm going to do a replay and give live feedback as we watch the replay and give tips and strategies on how to be faster. And this is one of the things I'm really excited about to do in the future more. And if anybody has, questions or wants to do something like that with me personally, message me, whether it's on any of the, where I'm at here. We have X, we have the Zero app, we have Discord. Super excited to do more kind of analysis and racing with people and so forth. And then at the end, we'll do some group racing. If at any time you guys have questions, type them into the chat, and then the guys will kind of chime in. I got a million screens and a million things going on. So I can see the chat, but if anything comes up while I'm going through things, let me know, and I'll cover it as best I can. Cool. Awesome. So what we're going to do is get started here with logging in. And let me bring in the volume of the game a little bit. So in talking about sound, what we're going to focus on in this episode here specifically is going to be the engine sound, all right? This came obvious to me when I was getting acquainted with the game and also being associated with other simulators like iRacing and Assetto Corsa. The sounds that you hear are super, super important because they tell you a lot about what's going on. The two biggest things I would say are wheel and tire noise as well as the engine. Now, in Midnight and Miami, in our current build, the engine is going to be the main thing we want to hear because the tire sounds don't give you as much feedback. In other sims that are more advanced for actual simulation and not maybe Simcade style, they play a bigger role. But the first thing we're going to do is actually adjust our settings so that we could really hone in on what we want. So if we go to the settings of our game, we're going to go to audio, and we're going to turn the master and car volume up to 100% and turn everything down to 0. Because this is going to keep out all the other noise and distractions. Now, I certainly love listening to cool music when we race. It gets the energy going, but for the purpose of what we're going to cover here, we're going to turn it all the way down so the only thing we hear is the car volume, okay? So if you're going to practice this later on, make sure you kind of follow these settings or just, or play with it, but listen to that car volume. It's going to be the important thing that we're going to cover here. So now that we have that set, let's go ahead and jump in, and we're going to load up one track in particular. So there's a couple good examples where this is going to really play in. Let me bring down this volume and I'll bring it up later. What we're going to start off looking at are examples where you have really long bendy curves where you could keep either full power or full throttle down and still turn throughout the curve, or maybe come off of power a little bit. Now this concept is going to play into any turn that you do, but it's going to be most obvious when we do have turns that are very long that you could hold full power. So we're going to go to 9 lives as our first one. And what we're going to focus on is if we look at this here at the map, well, let's load it because it's easier for me to there we go. So if we're starting off here, when we come to this turn here, you can see that we have this big, long, wide turn, and maybe, I don't know, definitely not a 90-degree angle here, call it 30, 40% degree. We could hold full power throughout this whole thing, and this is the turn that we're going to start off looking at. So we're going to go ahead and throw up a few laps on here and just be by myself. So what we're listening for is the sound of the engine, whether it is revving up or revving down. Now, in the current build, we have only the option of using an automatic transmission. So we have no real control over what gear the car is actually in. And because of that, it's all the more important to be cognizant and listen to what the engine's doing, because there are techniques that we could do to prevent it from getting pushed down or being limited. We want that engine to rev high, or at least to keep revving and going faster, okay? And the amount of steering angle is the main thing that's going to dictate whether that's going up or down as this loads. Because the other thing to talk about is, if it's not obvious, the amount of steering you apply is going to limit your speed. The more steering you apply, the slower your car could go. Or pretty simple, but not always obvious. But it will become obvious when we decide how we want to take a specific turn. All right, so let's go ahead and jump in here. And what I'm going to do is kind of creep up on the turn that we're going to look at. And when we do this, we want to hit it at full speed, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is bring up, let's get out of this guy. I'm going to bring up the audio of the game extra loud, because again, what we want to do is really listen to the engine sounds, okay? So we're going to get in here and get moving. And get to the turn that is going to be the one that we're going to give for our example. So now you can also pay attention to the gear you're in the bottom right underneath the miles per hour. So coming after this turn here, we got this long straightaway, and then we got the very slow bend to the right, okay? And this is going to be the turn that we're going to use as our example. So the first time I do this, what I'm going to do is take a very wide turn, and I'm going to try to apply a minimal amount of steering. And I could do that if I take the ideal racing line. And again, the ideal racing line, if we haven't seen my other videos, or if you're not sure, and this is a general rule in motor racing, it's basically taking the shortest path to get through the turn, but also lining you up to get the most speed out of the turn, okay? And to do that, the big turn that we have is a right-hander. So I want to be to the left side of the track when I approach this turn. And what I want to do is hit the apex of the turn, which is the most inner side of the turn. I need to hit that because that's the shortest angle between the turn. But what I'm trying to do is approach that and get through it with a minimal amount of steering as possible. Because again, the more steering I apply, the more it's going to slow the car down. And we're going to really notice this by how the engine sounds. So I'm going to gas it. We're going to hit full NOS. I'm going to get to this turn and try to do it with minimal steering. And there's two turns, okay? And you could use this whole big U-turn, if you will, as an example throughout this whole thing. So here's the first example. I'm going to shut up so you can just listen to what the engine does. Okay, so you can hear the engine still going up, still going up. A little bit of down there, but there we go. Okay, so you could hear that in that example. The engine kind of, let me get the... Okay, as I get back around, there we go. So I'm going to now line back up for the second pass. But what we're going to do now is not take as much of an ideal line, and we're going to turn a lot harder. And what we're going to do is listen to the effects of the engine. Now, I didn't catch the gear I was in, but again, what we're doing is more focusing on the sounds rather than the actual gear. You could also obviously use the miles per hour, but I tend to like to focus on only one variable, because when you're racing, especially against somebody, very hard to focus on multiple things. Okay, so let me get the volume back up. We're going to take a second pass, and then this time, what we're going to do is take a different line, turn a lot harder and more steady, and we're going to hear what that does to our engine. Okay, let's give it a go. Okay, here we go. Now, if you heard the engine, so hopefully you heard the difference there. It might not seem like it's a huge deal, but you could hear how the engine struggled to get higher, and then it was even coming down as I was really turning the wheel hard, okay? Did that make sense? Can anybody hear what I'm talking about? Write in the chat or chime in real quick just to make sure this is connecting and you guys hearing it. Cool, awesome. Okay, yeah, very cool. So the idea here should be pretty obvious, but as I apply more steering angle, it limits how fast and how high the engine can rev. And I did actually, let me turn this down 1 second because I'm gonna just chat for a bit. Now, I did actually reach out to Aris and confirm this with him because, you know, not only is it a fact of general motor racing and how a car performs both in real life and in simulators, but it is also, you know, confirmed that the more steering you put on the wheel, the more the algorithm is just going to make the car not go as fast. So that's the basic concept. And so what you want to then start doing is really analyzing that on your own racing and see how can I get through a turn with using the least amount of steering as possible, because that's going to get me through the turn faster, okay? Now, there's a couple caveats to this that you also want to consider. Now, let's go take a look at this turn a lot closer. And I got my volume down because I'm not as worried about the engine right now. Let's talk about the ideal racing line. So here's our turn that we were doing. So approaching this turn, I want to be all the way to the left side. And I have a choice now, because again, I have to hit the apex. So my apex is this guy right there, right? So we want to make sure that we hit that corner as tight as possible, because that is the shortest distance to get through this. Now, I could hit this with my car facing as is right now, and you can see by doing this, I could head this way, and now I could slightly turn to get to a straight angle where now I'm not putting any steering on the wheel or any angle, okay? Versus if I come at it with a not so ideal line. Now let's say I'm coming at this turn and I'm coming here in the middle of the track, and now I have to make my turn. For me to get through this clean, I have to turn the wheel a lot harder to get through it clean. And that turning it harder is, of course, going to limit the engine, and it's going to limit the speed of my car. So that's the basic principle, okay? Now, the caveat that I said is when you're racing, you don't always have the opportunity to take the ideal line. You know, if you got two cars that are neck and neck and you're both fighting each other, someone hopefully has the right ideal line to take. But even then, you might need to compromise because the other car is going to be on the inside and you can't hit the apex if they're close to it. So you got to understand both how to do this on your own so that if you are in the chance of a race and you have the ability to use the whole track, you could take the ideal line and you will gain way more on your competitors if they're not doing this. But even in the event when you are racing somebody, you want to understand this and still say, how can I take whatever the best line is available, but use the least amount of steering, okay? So that's the main idea there. And again, using the engine sound is the way you want to kind of approach this. Now that is with a big, long right-hander, okay? The same thing holds true when you're doing tight right-handers or even smaller turns, okay? Because you could turn the wheel a lot, a little. It depends on how you approach the turn. So if we just take, let's go back to turning, we got a left-hander up here. So let's go back to getting our engine noise up. And I'm going to back up a little bit. Okay, and we got a left-hander coming up. Let's take this left-hander and see what the engine does. when we take it. All right. Yeah, that was too tight. So with that one, I let off the engine. I let off the gas, okay? This is an example where it still matters, okay? You can't necessarily hear the engine, but your car is still going to slow down more if you add more steering. So when you have these quick right-handers, it's still a matter of understanding getting the best ideal racing line so you could use the least amount of steering, keep the car as straight as possible, and accelerate out of the turn as much as possible, okay? So again, this concept is going to play into big wide turns, but also short ones, okay? Let's load up one more example that I like using, and that one is on Underground. So Underground, obviously a long, long track, but it's got a really great example towards the beginning of it. And keep in mind, these are the things that make it so that if someone's in front of you and you seem like you just can't catch them, remember from the last, if you saw my last, let's get into Underground, and we'll load this up. So in the last event I did, we did talk about, hang on one sec. Let's make sure this guy loads. And if anybody has questions on this too, let me know if everybody's cool so far. So with Underground, we're going to look at a similar scenario that we could practice this on. We got a long sweeping left-hander in this case, okay? And again, we have the option to approach this in a bunch of different angles. And let's get this going. All right, there we go. Okay. Let me get my volume up on this. Okay. Pumping it up. Okay, so let's get up to So coming onto this next turn, we have our little chicane here. So we're going to go to the right. We're going to go to the left. Now coming onto this left-hander, I have a very long straightaway. And then after that, I have a big sweeping left-hander and then another left-hander, okay? We could take both of these at full throttle. So super important to understand where the ideal line is. Use the least amount of steering as possible and keep that engine ramping up the whole time if possible. And don't apply more steering than you need, okay? So let's give it a shot. Okay, we're up to speed. Here we go. Here's our first left-hander. Just headed straight to the curb. There we go. Another one. All right, so that little segment there, a really, really, really good spot to practice this technique, okay? Because that is taking more of an ideal line. I didn't hit the apex too great, but you can see how I only turned as much as I need to keep the car straight. Now let's go back and we'll practice that again. Whoop, don't want to take that line. Okay, so coming into this one more time, we're going to take this, and now I'm going to take less of an ideal line. We're going to add more steering angle on that turn, and we're going to see what happens to the sound of the engine. Speed, here we go. there you go. You can hear the engine came down one more time on this turn. You can hear how the engine's struggling, okay? So that's the concept. Oop, hang on a sec. Okay, so that's the basic concept. Now, the other thing we're going to talk about is how this relates to the steering angle. Anybody question? We good? Cool. Okay. So the concept along with this is talking about the steering angle. And now I'm on a wheel and pedal setup, okay? But what we want to understand is, and I did talk to Iris about this next concept. The car that you work with, a lot of the cars right now, if not all of them, mostly do what's called understeer, okay? Understeer is when your car, you might be turning the wheel more and more and more, but the car doesn't turn more, okay? You're at the limit of how much traction the car has, and no matter how much more you turn the wheel, it's not going to turn the car anymore because you're on the limit of what the car can perform at, okay? Under or oversteer is the opposite, or you could just think about oversteer as the car fishtailing, okay? So, but most of the cars, if not all of them right now in this build of the game, do understeer. So it's very common and easy to add more steering than is needed, all right? And that's a really important concept because it plays into what we're talking about. If you're turning the wheel or the controller, or if you're holding down the controller longer than you need to, when you've completed the turn, you're still going to have excess steering angle on the input, and that's going to limit the car. So it's really important to figure out what is the least amount of steering angle that I could use to get through a turn and not hold it down longer than I need to, okay? Now, something with a wheel that is easy to kind of go overboard, since it oversteers, is it's very common to hold the wheel and keep turning it more than you need, but what happens then when you're done with the turn? Let's say I only needed to, I could actually detach my wheel here. Let's say I only need to take my wheel and turn it this much to get through an actual corner, okay? When I get back, now all I have to do to get back to center is that much, okay? From here to here. And you could think of the same thing on a controller, is if you're on a controller here and you're going here to here. Now, obviously, this is a total different beast, but the concept is the same, okay? If you're getting through a turn, the car's not turning anymore, and you're still jamming on the controller, you know, you want to find out when is the quickest I can get it back to zero and neutral, because that's going to keep the engine going faster. But again, this technique is more important on a wheel, because let's say that's all I need, boom, I can get back quick. If I'm understeering and I'm thinking that this is what's going to help the car turn the corner quicker, now I have to have a full 90 degrees to get back to zero. Now, it might not seem like that is a big difference from this. But when you look at the leaderboard, you see that every space is dictated by a hundredth of a second. Every little bit counts, okay? So the whole idea is when you're done with a turn, getting back to neutral as quick as possible is going to save you time and make you faster, okay? Let me know if that makes sense. And again, it's very important to understand on a wheel and pedal setup because it's very easy to turn the input way more than you need than to get through the turn, okay? So that is the concept. Now, when you have a wheel, there are settings you could use. Now, I'm on what's called the SimMagic. SimMagic is the company that makes my pedal and wheel and motor. And there are settings that I could use to dictate different things. If you are on a wheel, you can play with the amount of angle that the wheel can actually turn. Right now, you could see that mine's at 320. So in other words, the wheel will only turn 320, and there's a hard lock at 320. If I bring this down to like 90, I could only turn the wheel this much, and it won't turn anymore. But now every little movement that I make is going to be that much more sensitive. So you're playing with the sensitivity of the input versus how much you can actually turn. So you got to find a happy medium, and then you have to just get good at working with it at that angle. I like using it between 320 and 360 on the wheel. The other thing that I could use in this, and I don't know, depending on different devices, but there are settings in this case, which is called mechanical spring. This is what brings the wheel back to neutral quickly. So the further I get away from zero, the more force it will want to pull to get back to zero. And I've used this in Midnight in Miami to help remind me to get the wheel back to neutral as quick as possible when I get through a turn. Because without a lot of force feedback in the current version of the game, it's very easy to just keep cranking the wheel thinking that it's going to turn your car more when it doesn't. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have questions on it. Now, with a controller, again, it might not seem like a lot, but you could apply the same concept to it and just, because when you're in the moment, you're thinking that just like bowling, you're doing this. It's not going to make the ball roll any different after you throw it. When you get done with a turn, see how quickly you can get back to neutral, all right? I know a technique that a lot of guys do is, they always hold the controller up and then turn as needed because this gives you more precision over the turn versus if I hold this neutral and only go left and right, it's a little bit harder to feel that. Other guys, that are amazing with controllers, please chime in because this is not my wheelhouse. A wheel is my house. I don't really practice much with a controller in this because I have this whole setup. But again, you could still think of this concept while using a controller. So, when I talked to Aris about this, the main thing, the trade-off is that a wheel allows you to be more precise with your inputs, okay? But at the expense of not being able to get back to neutral quite as quickly. Whereas a controller, you don't have the same amount of clarity in how much you move, yet getting back to neutral is just almost letting go, and you're already back to neutral. So just something to think about. Again, when you're practicing this, use your ears, use the sound of everything, and hopefully that'll help you kind of hone in on this technique and just see how much it can help you save time. Let me know if that makes sense. If you have questions, let me know. And, of course, with a keyboard, that's the ultimate, dictator of this because, with a keyboard, you only have on or off. Okay, with steering inputs, it's either full steering or no steering. So you have even less amount of clarity between that. Same with braking and turning. So I don't know how many people are going to be super quick with this, but it's there. If this is your only option, think about the technique. Get off the key as soon as you can if you're turning. So that's all I have to say about keyboards because I don't know how many people are using them for racing, but different beast for a different type of game. I know shooters, you're probably going to be better off on a keyboard rather than anything. So, anyhow, that is that. Any other questions on that? Or if not, let me know. But otherwise, if Pims, you're around and we want to jump in and doing a race, because that was the main two topics for technique that I wanted to talk about. And what we're going to do now is jump into doing a race. And I'm going to record it. I'm going to trail behind, and we're going to analyze it and see what we can do to help Pims out to get a little bit quicker. So, Pims, if you're there, let me know.
Hey, mate. Yep, I'm here, ready to go.
Kick ass. Okay. So...
I'm finding match now.
Okay, cool. There we go. Okay. We're on Seaside. And we're going to do some community racing right after, we do this. So we'll have about 10, 15 minutes afterwards. And we'll jump into that. So I'm recording right now. We're going to enter this race. I'm going to follow behind him. And then we're going to watch it back. And I'm going to see if I can give him some tips on how to be quicker.
Exactly. Now you've seen what to do, it's time to see what not to do.
We got to get your confidence up. Let me turn that down a little. Yeah.
Right as the fence. All right, my Ferrari's looking good, ready to roll.
Cool. I switched it up and used the Wambo, so we'll load up on NOS, load up on fuel. All right. You ready, buddy?
Yeah. Good luck, dude.
Okay.
Little bit of NOS to get me off the line.
There you go. You're still alive.
Still alive. Haven't technically hit a wall yet. Are we doing 2?
Yeah. Yep. Let's do one more.
That wide. It's bad.
Yep.
I'm out of NOS. Didn't save
Yes.
NOS for the last race.
No
But
worries.
I'll take that. Playing under pressure. Looking
Not bad
for
at
the
all.
gear in your
Not bad at all. Okay, let's get through this guy. Cool.
You even let me win. Which is
Yeah.
classic.
No problem. Okay, so let's do a couple things here. Now, let's go back and check out our replay. Okay. Let's get rid of me. All right. Okay, we can see the replay, yeah? And hang on. Let's get rid of all these lines. Cool.
Yeah, looking good.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're going to take this out. Actually, hang on. Let me close my games so I don't hear that in the background. Cool. All right, so let's start out and we'll watch the beginning here and I'll just analyze everything that we got going on. So, turn number 1, left-hander. So, right there. Obviously, I'm going to keep harping on the apex, right? Because that's always going to be our closest and fastest line to take. So, the apex there is the curb with the light post there. So, definitely you have a whole car width there, right?
Yeah.
Definitely room there, and that's going to come up a lot. And that's very normal, but with all the 90-degree turns and very tight turns that happen, that is something to continually practice. The tense moments of being in a race, really, it's very easy to forget about that. But that's where the muscle memory comes in, and that's where the training comes in of like knowing a track really well to kind of hit those apexes. So same thing here. Now, where you are right now, you're in the middle of the track, right?
No bueno.
Yeah, we got a left-hander coming up. I want to be to the right as much as possible close to these palm trees so I could take a super wide turn, less steering angle, and then get on NOS as quick as possible here. So, again, you can see how wide you go there.
Yeah.
The other thing to mention is use of NOS, okay? It's very, very common if you're getting a little behind, if you feel like you're being chased really closely, to kind of use NOS at the wrong moments. Now, sometimes you might want to use it to catch up or get a little bit ahead. But if you're practicing a lot on your own, really try to figure out where's the best place to use NOS. If you can get it coming out of a corner, it's going to accelerate you quicker. But there's also certain corners where it doesn't make any sense to use it because maybe it's a short straightaway, right? And the gains of just a little bit before you have to get back on the brakes doesn't make sense for that moment of the track. So I'm not going to like say when and not to use it right now, but keep in mind when you're practicing, if you got to turn a short straightaway and another turn, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to waste NOS in between those two parts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally, and it's true. Amateurs like myself will burn through our NOS, which I did in this very race. Whereas the more professional racers like yourself, Sharky, Castor Troy, Aris, you'll smoke me and use no NOS.
Yeah.
You know, and it kind of shows you don't need NOS to win races.
Yeah. Yep. So, and the other thing too is like I noticed a lot where see how you're still on NOS right now and you're applying steering. Okay. Most cars, when you apply the NOS, that's when you lose control of the car because that extra boost puts it into an oversteer situation, right? Oversteer is where you lose the back end and you can't control it. So NOS is best with less steering angle. So there's really no point to use it if you're going to turn a little bit. As much as possible, use it when you're going straight so that you're, just like the topics we talked about earlier, that you're not limiting the engine, right? So you can see how you're all over the track, right?
Yeah.
You want to make your turn, get into a straight line, and keep with that as long as you can. Little steering angles, right? So coming in here, again, there's your apex. You got like a car and a half width there, right? And, of course, here, you're going to have to go wide, and you're going to have to come right back around because my next apex is going to be on the left, so I want to get to the right side as soon as possible.
So I'm already going too fast, so I can't hit the apex.
Right, and that's where you also got to play with how fast do I need to be, because sometimes you have to compromise being on throttle to set yourself up for the next turn, right? The best way to understand that is look at the length of straightaway of your next segment after a turn. If you look at the bottom left of the screen, you know, it's a pretty short straightaway here before you have to turn again. So this one isn't hypercritical. Every turn's critical, but not, I wouldn't say, is as critical as a turn where you have a super long straightaway. Because remember, when you come out of a turn, how much speed you get out of that is going to compound for the full distance you're on throttle afterwards. All right?
So can I ask you, for a corner like that, would you tap the NOS as you come out of that? Or are you just thinking this isn't worth wasting any NOS on?
On this one, probably not. If I'm in a good position and I don't need to kind of worry about it, definitely not. You know, because that's the other thing is like sometimes you might want to just give a little bit to get ahead or to stay in the back. But this one I normally would probably not hit it if all things are going well in the race. I should say that. If I'm doing well after like the first few turns, I'll preserve it as long as I can. Because the other thing is maybe I get behind, maybe I mess up on a turn mid-race, and then somebody gets ahead of me. Number one, you want to try to not freak out because that's what happens to everybody. You're like, oh, shit, you know, now you're...
Which I do every time.
Exactly. But what you also want to try to save some reserves for is like sometimes somebody will mess up that's ahead of you. And in that event, maybe it's just that little bit of NOS that'll help you get past them. So, you know, if I'm racing, I only use it when I need to. And I try to save it as much as I can in the event that I mess up and things get real tight towards the end of the race. But, yeah, to answer your question, on this one, I probably wouldn't use it there. If I'm trying to do time trials, it's a different beast, you know, because, you know, when you're doing a time trial, you are literally, you're going to burn all your NOS in one lap. You got to keep taking into consideration, I got 2 laps on this race. Some of the races where there's 4 and maybe it's a super long course, you have to be that much more specific about when you use it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's good advice.
Cool. All right, so continuing on here, again, just apexes right there. That wasn't too bad, right? You're closer to like maybe a half a car width there. But the steering angle there, that wasn't too bad, you know, because you kind of came off it. You get on your NOS.
Oversteered.
Exactly.
Instead of straightening up, I've just kept going.
Right, right. And again, because you're going so fast there. Now, if I go back a little bit, look how long you stay on your NOS for, right? So I come here. Hang on, we got to get back to the actual turn we were talking about.
Nice. While we do that, I'm going to jump in the chat and throw out the Odyssey code.
Oh boy, what everybody's waiting for.
The Odyssey code for today is Racing Academy 1. I'll put it in the chat. We'll leave it there for a couple of minutes so you can copy and paste it. And we'll let Derek get back to telling me how to be a better racer.
Cool. Racing Academy 1 is your code. All right, so coming into this straightaway here, okay? So you're on your NOS, left, go. You have this turn now, right? You got to slow down now real quick, and you kind of waste a lot of that speed that the NOS is giving you. So, again, maybe quickly coming out of a turn, going into the next straightaway, but when you have a turn that's quick coming up, you know, you're using your NOS, and then you have to turn it off and brake hard right away. And you're kind of negating a lot of the advantage you have of using the NOS. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when you're using it, you want to try to experiment with just enough to kind of get you out of the corner quickly, get you some acceleration. But if you have a tight couple turns coming up or a chicane, think about how you have to brake, because Now you have to apply all this brake so quick. It sets you so fast. That's the reason why you're going to miss your apex. It's because you're going so fast, you can't make that apex. And right here we have a chicane. Chicane is like 2 turns left, right after another. Okay? So right here, I have to be very conscious of how I'm going to handle this, all right? I want to hit this apex right there, but now I have to get right in line for a left-hander. So I can't take the ideal line like my car's pointed right now. If I keep going straight, I'm going to totally mess up the next turn. What I have to do is get right as much as possible so that I can line up for the next turn, right? So right there is my apex, and now I'm going to head towards this one. So moving along. Again, this is another super important one because we have a left-hander, and then we want to get super tight right to try to get around this island. Now, right there, because you took it a little bit wide, you're going to hit that curb. That's going to slow you down a whole ton. Then you have to bank left hard again, which is all going to be not optimal. Make sense?
Believe it or not, I was actually proud that I made it the right-hand side of the palm tree because usually I'm always going left.
Yeah. Well, honestly, too, it's something you want to gauge because it's not always, especially when you're racing side by side or close to people, sometimes it's not always going to be the best thing to do. And you want to practice being able to say, hey, if I miss that and I have to go to the left of the island, it's all good. I just know how to make up for that, right? Because the other thing you could, yes, and there's some other techniques that I wouldn't advise in this one, but you can dive bomb in some situations if you're super close. What that means, and you're not, the only way you could dive bomb this is if you're going to hit the other person. So in other words, you're on the right here. If I turned left and was on the left side of this island, we're both needing to turn left. I could use my NOS, fly right past the apex, and honestly, the only option I have is to hit you. But it's an option there that, again, I don't advise it because it's not clean racing. But it is a technique that's done when there is a turn that you can navigate both, and that's a way to get ahead of somebody because once you're ahead of them, they technically have to slow down so they don't hit you. So dive bombing is a term that we're going to tie to what we call racecraft. Racecraft is just technique in racing on how to be faster than somebody else when everything's not ideal. So anyways, back to our straightaway here. Obviously, this is our longest straightaway. So you're going to use your NOS. You get off the NOS, which is good. You're going to get to a speed where, all right, now you're cruising. You don't want to waste all of it, so you got to find that happy medium. But now we have this new left-hander, much better. See where you're hitting that apex?
Yeah, a lot better.
Way, way better. There's where you want to be. So now you hit your apex. You got no room, but the little, maybe an inch or two, which is perfect. Centimeters.
Screenshot that. Put that on my wall.
Yeah, right. Totally. And now you can see your line is pretty darn good, right? You're not going to hit the curb. You're coming at this. You could now here's where though you're not lining up perfectly for this one. You got 2 car widths before this, where you could be much more to the right to line up better for this turn. But that's another perfect apex right there. See what I mean? So
yeah, it kind of one leads into the other. If you hit the corner well, especially like you said with those chicanes,
yes,
hit the first one sweet, get your line right, it makes the second one even easier to get through.
Yes, exactly. So beautiful spot right there. And then now right there, a little bit too much steering angle coming off, right? You hit the curb a little bit, but you can just focus on shooting straight out, less steering angle, because this is a very mild turn. So you could very, slowly let go of the steering angle and not throttle down the engine as much, if that makes sense.
Yeah, nice.
Cool. So then a little bit more steering there, but now see how you're way over to the right. No reason to be over there. You want to be where I am because you got a right-hander coming up. See what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And now that's going to force you to take a horrible line, and now you're also out of position for the next turn, right? So now you can't hit that apex, and now you're going to run right into the curb there.
Yeah, don't screenshot that one.
So, as you can tell, all these things compound, especially with so many tight right and left-handers. In other sims, or I'm really excited to have the builder, for races, that we could create our own tracks because, hopefully we could sculpt some tracks that have a lot more big sweeping bends like we saw in Nine Lives, in Underground. Twilight is another one that has a really long turn that makes for some really good racing and technique that we could do. So coming up,
this is something that Aris has talked about as well. Like, once we have more of the world to play in, there is a lot more options when it comes to creating exciting tracks.
Yeah, but that's all the more reason too, like right now, to practice these techniques, because it's what's going to make you win races and be faster when there's all these other options out there. Because you're just kind of programming yourself to always know and spot what is the ideal line. How do I hit my apexes? You know, and then getting to know the actual track is where all the nuance comes in. But, you know, 80-20 rule, you could kind of just focus on 80% of where you're losing time and just knowing how to hit an apex clean. So, cool. Any questions on that? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, loads of good tips there. I want to get back on the track and start practicing, I think.
Yeah, totally. So, again, really cool to kind of take these concepts and just see what you could do with them. So, cool. Well, we have about 10 minutes left. If anybody has questions, type them in, let me know. But we can also jump into...
I did see one good question, Madurk.
Sure.
Sharky brought it up. The discussion between first person and third person view. What's your personal opinion on why you like to race like in a first person and versus a third person?
Yeah, great question. Honestly, it's just what I always am in first person, because it's what I use for all the other sims like iRacing, Assetto Corsa, and it just allows me to be closer to seeing things. I'm not going to say it's better or worse, really. Honestly, I've never really practiced or done much in third person. I could see some benefits of being in third person where you could see a higher level of, you know, what's coming and seeing how close you are. I just like it because it's more engaged and you're just more in it, if you will.
Yeah,
but
it's interesting. I remember playing PlayStation back in the day in the 90s. I was always in third person. So when I got my computer and I downloaded Midnight in Miami the first time, I thought, right, third person, that's me. And once I got used to it, I realized, no, actually, I much prefer the first person view as well.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't have it's a great question. It's fun. I would say if you have more fun in the other, you know, go for it. Again, my biggest agenda is just fun, but I like winning. I like being quick, and just experimenting with it is really kind of the way to go.
Definitely. I think third person would be nice when we're on long drives through Miami.
And something that's really cool to do in the other sims that like I said, iRacing or Assetto Corsa, you know, everyone plays in first person, but they have replays of every race. And when you analyze replays, it's very common to watch in third person, because then you get a higher view of what happened. Hopefully we'll get there with Wild World and Midnight in Miami, where we can watch replays and then switch the view. Because that way you learn so much by watching different views. And that's something too that I would definitely advise people to do when you want to team up and work with people, or, you know, again, reach out to me. And if you ever want me to follow behind you, record it like I did, you see so many more things about your technique that you could use to clean up when somebody else is watching and recording and then analyzing. And so that way you could stay in whatever view you prefer, but having someone watch from the back gives you that extra perspective that you don't have when you're in whatever you prefer when you're racing.
Definitely.
Cool.
Got another good question there. Do you use pedals too with your wheel?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have, you know, the SimMagic, what they're called SimMagic P1000s, brake and gas pedal. The other thing too, and it's a good point to mention, just like steering angle, right now with the brake pedal, it's very much on or off. You know, again, in other cars and more advanced simulators, you know, you use the brake. The brake is as important as everything else. And there's techniques that are called trail braking, and the amount of pressure varies a lot. And that makes all the difference, because you actually use the brake pedal to steer the car almost as much as the wheel. That might sound weird, but the more brake you use, it's going to put the balance of the car either to the front or to the back. So if I apply brake, it's going to put the balance of the car to the front of the car. And that's going to affect how well the traction is when I steer. So all of these are very advanced techniques that you could actually feel in simulators that have force feedback. And again, something I'm really excited about for the new builds. I'm sure we're going to work on that with Midnight in Miami. But I do use brake, you know, a brake and a gas pedal. But my brake is very sensitive, and it's almost 100% because it's just kind of a tap. But you could experiment with setting it to be not sensitive, so you have a different level of pressure to slow you down more so or the other. But if you think about a controller, it's on or off for the most part. And if you think of a keyboard, it's on or off as far as the brake goes. So cool. Sounds like we got a hot mic somewhere. But cool. All right. Well, I'm going to jump into US. Does anybody else want to jump in? And if anybody can, maybe do some group racing. But if any other questions, definitely type them in.
Virginia server. Jump on the Virginia server. That's where Derek's going to be racing.
All right, I'm going to stick with the Wambo and see how this does.
If I have a rig that's set up for
Yeah, go ahead.
If I have a rig that's set up for iRacing, will it be pretty easy, you think, to map it to like the Corsair type settings, or?
Yeah, great question. Are you on a wheel and pedals then?
Yeah, I got like a full rig with like everything.
Yeah, I love it. The biggest thing I'd advise if you're on a wheel is if I go to, like, right now you can see my screen, right? If you look at the preset, I have a Wilder World preset, and that limits my angle to 360 degrees. If you look at what I use for my iRacing, let's see, discard that. I use a 900% steering angle, and that's default for most of the advanced sims, especially iRacing. Because iRacing, way more advanced, it could check, it knows and all that, and how that stuff is calibrated perfectly. You do not want to use a 900% steering angle in Miami because then, you could turn the wheel, 180 degrees and you're not going to get much input. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, so the biggest thing I would say,
minimal with it right now. Okay.
yeah, I would play around 300 to 360 degrees as far as the angle that you could set. I know, like G929s, for Logitech, any software with a wheel and pedal setup should allow you to adjust the angle. That's what you want to play with the most. And then the only thing I do, because most of these other settings aren't really affected much because there's really no force feedback. It's not part of the algorithm right now for my night in Miami. The only other one I play with is my brake pedal. So right here, I can adjust how sensitive is my brake. Right? When I'm in iRacing, I go 100% because that means, it takes up to, my body literally gets pushed into my seat when I fully brake. The brake pedal takes a lot of pressure to fully push down. And all this movement you're seeing does make a difference in something like iRacing. But in Wilder World, I set this to 20 so that if I just barely touch it, it goes to 100%. See how quickly that goes up? And now I don't need to press it hard because right now it's on or off. So those are the two settings that I change when I go between iRacing and Wilder World.
Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
I'll just say the code one more time for those keeners who showed up late. Racing Academy 1, the number 1. All one word, all lowercase. That's the code for today. Racing Academy number 1. Racing Academy 1.
Cool.
Right, we're 3 minutes off the hour now, so everyone jump in Virginia server, get in some races.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's do pick a track.
Let's go 9 lives.
I love it. It's my favorite track. I'm going to jump in 4 players. Do we have 4 players? I guess we'll see.
I will jump in as well. I'm just reloading now.
Ah, there we go.
You might have 4 already.
I love it. We need S. All right. Sharky, Guava. Awesome. Let's get it.
I almost made it in the queue. I'll catch the next game.
Oh, stay in queue. See if there's you get another round. Hopefully get a bunch of people in there.
I'll join your wing. We never get to race.
All right, yeah.
Let's try a 4-player and then we can just count our way down.
Sounds good.
Hopefully this loads. S. We got it.
All right, who's jumping in with me and wing? 9 lives, 4-player. Virginia server. We'll give it 30 seconds, wing, and then we'll go down to a 3.
Sounds good.
We do have a code, Chaley. The code is Racing Academy 1. All one word, all lowercase. The number 1. Racing Academy 1. There you go. Wings just popped it in the chat. Very generously.
I'm probably gonna regret using the Lambo, but let's see what happens. Everybody else is in the
let's try 3-player
Come
wing,
on, Tide.
and then we'll go down to.
Oh, did we got it?
twofers.
Yes. All right. Oh my God. Guava, killing me.
What is happening?
All right, looks like it's a 2-player wing. You and me.
The tag. Not a few months. Where? Yeah, doing store manager, community view stuff. So, yeah, I want to do the Wednesday and Saturday game night. One's pretty easy for West Coast US. Monday hangout. Still loading, by the way.
Yeah, me too. Oh, I'm on the track. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sitting there waiting for. Oh, there you are. You've just appeared. Yeah, we'll give it a minute. If not, we can Alt F4 our way back here.
Oh! Sharky takes it. Let's do a rematch on that one. Do a rematch on that one. Good one, Sharky. I got crunched at the beginning.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Guava was
Oh dear.
not giving you any favors.
Yeah.
Oh,
How did I
I'm
pass
so
you there?
stuck. Yeah, I literally hit a fence and it wouldn't let me move.
I went like completely sideways left, and then I went completely sideways right. The camera
Yeah, I was
in the wall.
excited. I thought I was going to make it through the shortcut before you, but alas, no. Right, I'm going to put some of Madurik's teachings into action now.
Right. This corner here.
And most of these things, too, keep in mind, are like things you want to practice and become second nature. Because, again, when you're in a race, it's so easy to just, everything you think about just goes to the wayside and you're all in it. So the more you could practice the techniques on your own and just become habitual, the
Yeah.
better they'll show up when you're racing and just be part of your, you know, your subconscious, if you will.
No way.
Oh, Wing, what happened?
I hit that cement barrier on the left there. It's sticking out a little bit.
Much cleaner exit.
We're waiting for one more.
Soon.
That'll spin out too. Right behind you though.
I'm feeling the pressure.
Oop, I think we're going back to hub. Oh, no, we're good. Awesome. Round 2.
Oh, that's a bad, bad, bad corner.
Right, mine was just as bad.
Uh-oh. Looks like it happened again to you guys.
Oh, we got a crash. We're good. Everyone's back on track.
So the idea of racecraft, sometimes it's better to burn a little NOS to get away from all the action. Oh, you guys are all jacked up, huh?
I don't know, I hit one of the cones in the shortcut and it just completely stopped.
Oh, I flipped. Almost.
All the way over.
That would have been a good view, Wing.
Yeah. Like a full barrel roll. Oh. Not terrible, but it was not great. Yeah, you cleared that last shortcut very nicely.
Yeah, I got lucky there, to be fair.
I'm going to wait up for you, Sharky. There you go.
I'm not far behind.
Happy days.
GG's.
GG's, Wing. It was nice to race you. It's been ages.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's been a while.
We're going to have to come to each other's game nights.
I need some more practice, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Hey, awesome. Thank you, Madurk. Another awesome Wilder Racing Academy. I got to shoot now.
My pleasure. We'll stay on for a
Great
couple
day,
more
everyone.
races. Take care, and we'll see you guys soon.
Enjoy, guys.
Good pimps. Yeah, the 28 next to these server meets off here. Gonna mute a few people during the show, so non-stop. There we go. What's Cryptid doing?
Oh,
Oh, it was so close. Who's got the NOS? Oh, no.
dang it.
That's going to lose it. Shit. Oh, man. Out of NOS.
On one breaking point.
Yeah, that's all it takes. Sweet.
That was close.
Yeah. Cool. All right, I'm going to sign off, guys. That was a pleasure. Hopefully you guys had fun. Remember, hit me up on wherever you find me. If you have questions, hit me up. If you want to do a little one-on-one like we did and I could record you, happy to do so. And, yeah, looking forward to doing a new Wilder Racing Academy soon. And that's about it. We're out. We'll talk to you guys later.